When you're having a hard time coming up with an original idea of what to talk about when it comes to the BYU football program, why not just echo what Gus Johnson had to say during the broadcast? There's something special brewing in Provo.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, resident BYU insider. Welcome on into a postcast edition of Locked On Cougars. Of course, we are your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. And let's talk BYU. I'm going to start it out with an old phrase using my radio job all the time. It came from the 2014 season for the University of Utah. Now, it's not something that's pro-Utes here, but it's a funny clip we have used literally for a decade at this point. And in the 2014 campaign, Utah had gone through back-to-back 5-7 seasons. And when Utah got their sixth win that year, Kyle Whittingham in the post-game locker room used this phrase, two words, bowl eligible. That was all the guys. I'm making a very anti-dramatic noise, but the biggest thing is BYU is 6-0, everybody. They have gotten all the way to bowl eligibility in their first 6 games of the year. This BYU team, they absolutely are killing it out there. I can't be more effusive in my praise as to what I'm watching with this BYU Cougars team. The one thing I am most impressed by, we'll start here on today's show, is yes, despite BYU officially being bowl eligible, even if they were to lose out the next 6 games, you can rest assured that the Cougars are going to the postseason. The thing I am most impressed with this BYU team is they are living the embodiment of what Kalani Sitake has preached for literally years. He talks often about complementary football. He wants all 3 phases to work in concert with one another. Speaking of the offense, helping out the defense helping out the offense, special teams. He wants all of them doing their part. That's what this team is doing right now. This was a game, BYU, remember, in the first half, piled up 259 yards, and it felt like it was on its way to potentially being a shootout between BYU and Arizona. BYU had 259 yards in the first half, and I was thinking, okay, you're probably going to have to double that number, go for like 500 plus to win this game. What does Jay Hill, speaking of the BYU defense, do at halftime? What I'm calling him right now, the master of adjustments. He walks into the locker room, sits down with his guys, and comes with a new idea of how he wants to attack the Arizona offense. They come out in the second half. I think Arizona ran 3 plays, and in those 3 plays, 2 turnovers, 1 interception by Jacob Robinson, absolutely phenomenal effort, tipping it up and intercepting himself. And then you have Isaiah Glasker come unabated to the quarterback on a blitz on the edge, strips it out. Harrison Taggart falls upon it, and BYU cashes in those for points. Overall in the game, BYU forces 4 turnovers, gets 24 points off of them. That's about as good as you can get. The only way it would have been better is, remember that strip by Isaiah Glasker. BYU's offense was unable to cash it in for 7 points for a touchdown. They had to settle for a field goal. That's the only way they could have been any better in this game. The second half of this game, the middle 8, as we've talked about with the Kansas State game not too long ago, and this game, there was a very similar feeling to it. BYU forces turnovers, cashes them in for points, takes what was a 1-possession game, makes it a 3-possession game, and for all intents and purposes, you're seeing out the game at that point. Did Arizona make it a little bit interesting late? Yeah, they punched out that ball on Hinkley Rapati when they got it back to a 2-possession game at one point, but BYU got the stops, I should say, that they needed, and they get the victory. I'm not going to lie. I am absolutely enthralled with how this BYU team is performing. I talk about that complementary football side of things. Once again, you thought BYU might have needed to pile up all those yards and points in the second half to win a game like this. Well, the defense came out and made their job easy. In this game, it's kind of funny to think about. BYU had what was a 99-yard drive for a touchdown, which was phenomenal in its own right, to drive the length of the field quite literally, because that was more like a 99.5-yard drive after Tanner Wall's phenomenal effort at center field to intercept that ball. BYU goes 99 yards for a touchdown there. And then as we talked about, one of those turnovers, the first one that BYU got in the second half, the interception for Jacob Robinson, gets down to the 9-yard line. Jake Retzlaff hits Chase Roberts. That was a 1-play, 9-yard drive for a touchdown. Doesn't matter how they come. All that matters is BYU scoring points. Kalani talks about it all the time. I want to see my guys score points. This is a team that is bought into what their head coach has been preaching for literally years now, and they're living the embodiment of what he wants to see from his football program. There's no game remaining on the schedule outside of maybe visiting Arizona State that really scares me that much. I don't mean any disrespect to the University of Utah, but is anybody fearing the big bad Utes right now? I wouldn't be. Oklahoma State's coming to BYU, yes, off of a bye week on a short week for BYU this coming Friday, but they've lost 3 straight games going into that bye. UCF is seeming to fall off a little bit here. They got beat by Cincinnati. There is so much opportunity for BYU on this schedule. It's a topsy-turvy league. The Big 12 is absolutely upside down. It's insane to think about that BYU picked 13th in the league is now on top of the league. You got Texas Tech right there. Okay, one of the favorites, speaking of Kansas State, they're in the mix, but really it's impressive what the Big 12 has done. Some of the big dogs, the teams that were the odds-on favorites to win this league, including the favorite Utah, are near the bottom of the standings, whereas you've got Arizona State, who is 16th in the preseason poll. They're near the top. BYU is at the top right now by virtue, I think, of like tiebreakers and just overall impressive wins and the like. It's a really, really fun time to watch this BYU squad. And the best part about it is Kalani's still got plenty he can get out of his guys. He talked about it after the game that Jay Hill probably saw stuff that he feels like he can be improved. One thing that I think the defense can improve, we'll talk about in a moment. I'm going to hold on to that one, a little bit of a tease there. But the last point I want to make in terms of talking about BYU is enjoy this. This is what, as fans, you should enjoy. I probably shouldn't pull the curtain back on this because maybe tempting fate on this, but it was already fate being tempted literally months ago. I've kept it pretty quiet, and I'm literally letting you guys know right now. I don't think many people outside of my immediate family know this, that my wife and her family are taking, we're going on a family reunion in December. Well, when in December are you going, Jake? Well, I'm going the first week of December. What's happening potentially the first week of December? Oh, there's something called the Big 12 Championship game in Arlington, Texas. Yeah, I remember when BYU was coming off that 5-7 season, and we booked that trip right around the end of last year, if I recall correctly, maybe even before the season ended. And families talking about going on this trip, and I told them, hey, second or third week of December is great and all. But what do? They book it for the first week of December. I remember looking at them, guys, you don't realize this is the Big 12 championship. Well, that's cute, but BYU's 5-7. There's no way they're making a trip to the Big 12 title game. And I said, and I vividly remember during that time saying it to my wife, saying it to some of my in-laws, you guys are tempting fate doing this. There's 6 games. We're 6 games through it, but were the football gods going to punish me? Maybe so, but hey, take my quote unquote punishment if it comes true and enjoy it, because it is a really fun time to watch this BYU squad. I can't be more praiseworthy than I am of this BYU team. It's really, truly a fun team to cover. You can believe that they are bought in. They're focused on the here and now. There's not a lot of guys getting a big head out there. And obviously, you got to keep that going for another 6 games in this regular season. But right now, it's all sunshine and rainbows in Provo, Utah. And that's a really fun place to be at. All right. Couple of things I will quibble with. What I want to see from BYU as they continue to try and progress and get better in the back half of the season officially, because now you're 6 games in. Now it hits the back half officially for the Cougars with Oklahoma State coming to town. We'll talk more about that, and then we'll get to your comments momentarily right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn is here for you guys to help you find the right people for your job. When you're a small business, you want to hire the right people. That's why you need to check out our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. They have the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn's not just a job board, everybody. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find literally anywhere else. Even those who aren't actively searching for a new job might be open to the perfect role. In fact, in a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, simply put, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours of their job posting. Hire professionals and do it like a professional, and do it on LinkedIn. 2.5 million small businesses are using LinkedIn for their hiring needs. So why aren't you? Post your job today for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Of course, terms and conditions apply. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. If you have not done so already, please join us on the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. Get the inside scoop on all things BYU sports by coming to your phone, quite literally in the form of a text message. Don't have to go to a message board to find the information you crave. I would send it out as soon as I'm hearing stuff, and what I'm able to share with you guys comes to our Locked On Cougars Insider Group first. And in fact, there's a lot of it that doesn't ever make it anywhere else other than the Insiders Group. So join us today and be a big part of it. 14-day free trial to see if it's the right option for you as well. So join us today. The link's in the show notes below, and hopefully you guys will be joining the Locked On Cougars Insider Group in short order. All right, let's roll on here. Now, I mentioned there's something that I think Jay Hill will be harping on his defense about from this game. It's a very impressive effort, obviously. Forcing 4 turnovers, keeping Arizona below 400 yards. A lot of good things for BYU in this game. So, Jake, well, what would they be harping on? Third downs. Any of you who watched that game watched Arizona and Noah Fifita in particular make life pretty tough for the Cougars on third down. I got to pull up the box score here because I accidentally clicked the X on it and closed it out. But the third down conversions for Arizona in this game are going to be something that he is going to, speaking of Jay Hill, going to look at and say, guys, we got to be better about that. So third down conversions for Arizona in this, 11 of 19. That's still well north of 50%. Not good enough for BYU's defense. And I believe I heard Greg Wrubell talk about on his postgame show that their average yards they picked up on third down in this game, 8. That's not a good percentage. Now, BYU was 4 of 11 on third down, so kind of more of what we have seen from BYU, but that 11 of 19 on third down, that is something that's got to be cleaned up. The turnovers made up for that in more ways than one, because when you go +3 in the turnover margin for BYU, and I believe now for the season they're +7 overall, it's going to make up for the fact that, yes, you got carved up on third down there. But I don't take anything more than I got to give props to Noah Fifita. He got absolutely battered in this game. 14 QB hurries or QB hits in this game on that young man. Really, really impressive stuff. The crazy thing is BYU had just 1 sack, and it felt like they could have had maybe 3, 4, 5 if things had broken a little bit different. But Noah Fifita deserves all of his laurels. He threw the ball 52 times in this game. Yes, he threw 3 interceptions. Yes, he got strip sacked 1 time. But I really do like the effort from the BYU Cougars out here in this game. The one thing I think that Jay Hill will continue to point at his guys and say, guys, that's too many yards overall, but we got to be better on third down. Third and long continues to be a down that if you're a Cougar fan, you're kind of holding your breath saying, maybe they'll get a stop this time. It's something they need to work on. Other thing I want to see improvement from for BYU on offense, flipping over to the offensive side of the football, is I still want to see this running game really come alive. We saw very positive signs in this game. North of 5 yards per carry overall in this one, running for 147 yards. And oh, by the way, the return of LJ Martin, Hinckley Rapati was a really nice thing to see. I think it's in particular, LJ did not look like he is fully 100%, but he's one of those guys, I truly believe this, that 80% LJ Martin is better than a number of guys on the roster for BYU. The one guy we did not see, and as I understood it, listening to Kalani Sitake in the preseason, was Sione Aimoa was going to be available on an as-needed basis. Let's say LJ and or Hinckley and or X number of running backs were ineffective. They would have, like, in case of emergency, break glass on a guy like Sione Aimoa, but it sounds like he needed maybe another week to get up to full speed. The good news is the Cougars did the job, and I think for the first time this season, if I'm not mistaken about this, BYU had somebody other than Jake Retzlaff as your leading rusher. It was Hinckley Rapati, 9 carries, 65 yards. That fumble late in the game, it's a tough one to stomach because it was punched out. It was a clean punch from the Arizona defender to punch it up, but I'm sure that Hinckley will be getting a Harvey Unga telling him, ball security, man, you got to hold on to the football. The positive signs I saw, though, are LJ Martin looks like he is getting closer and closer to full fitness. And once he's 100%, unleash that young man. I think he is a thoroughbred, a true thoroughbred for BYU on offense. And I think he has got a world of potential in him. And I hope we're able to see more of what that potential truly can become. Last thing for me, something I was very concerned about going into this game that ended up being, I guess, a chief strength for BYU is that offensive line. Bruce Mitchell is an absolute revelation, folks. He said it on this very podcast, I think 2-ish weeks ago. I talked with him one-on-one, and you heard him say the week before spring ball this year. So we're not even talking, so I've been April, so we're talking maybe late March at the very latest. He goes into a meeting with Jay Hill and says, Jay essentially tells him, hey, We'd like you to go over to offensive line. We like you on the D-line, but we'd like you to move to offensive line. We think you have a better future there. Well, yeah, he absolutely has a future there. I'm telling you right now, when Connor Pay comes back from his injury, and the fingers crossed it happens sooner rather than later because he is a team captain. He's absolutely a stud on that offensive line. I'm not saying it just because he's a good friend of the podcast. I truly believe he is a key cog for BYU on that O-line. But whenever Connor Pay comes back, until then, let Bruce Mitchell be your starting center. That's number one. I don't think that Sonny Mocassini or anybody else plays or will play better than Bruce did against Arizona. So let him be the starting center in the interim. When Connor Pay comes back, I don't think you can bench Bruce Mitchell. He is far, far too good of an offensive lineman to bench at this point. And the great thing about this is he went into training camp maybe the fourth string center? Because I would have handicapped it coming out of training camp. The number one was Connor Pay. Number two probably was Jake Eichhorn, splitting time with Sonny Mocassini as the backup. And then, Bruce Mitchell's probably in that mix. So really, truly, impressive stuff from that young man. Austin Leusev doing very, very solid work at right guard. The nice part is this offensive line continues to show it's got a very, very good performance still coming out of them on a week-by-week basis. Is it perfect? No, there were still some missed things in this game, but BYU is showing that the offensive line is coming along by leaps and bounds. And I got to put a major gold star next to the name of TJ Woods, because this is a man who has come in and absolutely honed this offensive line and rounded them into shape. For whatever you think of Daryl Funk, there's one thing in particular that BYU struggled with above all others during his 2 years with BYU's offensive line, and that's skill development. Connor Pay has said it on this podcast that skill development was not something that was emphasized under Coach Funk. It just wasn't. He believed that you guys can work on that in your own time. I'm more about scheming stuff and talking about strategy and the like. It's college, folks. That's a professional type thing to say that we're not going to work on skill development, but to completely neglect it, it was clearly evident it was neglected the last 2 years for BYU. TJ Woods has come in a very short amount of time, has made this offensive line into more of what BYU fans got used to in the early run with Kalani Sitake. Remember how dominant 2020, 2021, 2022, those offensive lines were for BYU. They were absolute maulers out there. It backslid hard under Daryl Funk. And you can think that's a negative thing on Kalani Sitake, whatever you think about it. It backslid. The good news is they have rectified the issue. And with the results already that have been produced by TJ Woods, how much truly better can this O-line get? It feels like they have still got plenty of runway to go. And that should be an exciting proposition for you to consider. So I really do think that Bruce Mitchell, he is far too good of a player, and what a find. I truly want to know what in particular, Jay Hill, got something in my eye here. Apologies if you're watching this on YouTube. But the bigger thing is, I think that Jay Hill, there was something that he saw or something that he observed about Bruce that told him, hey, give this guy a shot on the O-line. And what a position change that has been. And Bruce has been truly, truly impressive. All right, it is your guys' time to shine. Those are kind of my initial thoughts coming off of a marvelous win from BYU. I don't have any other thing to say about it other than it was absolutely marvelous. And like I said, I've only got two things I'm quibbling with about what I'd like to see from BYU, and they're kind of minor things in reality. But we'll talk about what you guys want to talk about in our final stanza of today's podcast. We always do it with these postcasts. Let you guys have your say, and we'll get to that momentarily right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at GameTime. Now, GameTime is here for you guys if you want to go out to events, if you want to go to a BYU football game, for example, or if you want to go to theater, comedy, music, concerts, whatever you're into, GameTime's got the options for you guys with an incredible app that makes it simple and easy to use. The best part is they got a new feature called the GameTime Picks feature, which makes getting your tickets to see your favorite teams or any other live event even easier. Filters out all the fluff to show only incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching for thousands of other tickets to find the right option for you guys. You also have incredible features like curated deals, make it easy to find the best price on great seats. They also have their game time guarantee. If you find better ticket prices, they'll credit you 110% of the difference if you can find better seats in the same row or section. It's absolutely incredible. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets and do it with our friends over at GameTime Picks. Download the GameTime app today, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? It is game time. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. If you want a full recap of the weekend that was, instant reaction and the like, check out the Locked On College Football Podcast. Spencer McLaughlin's doing a bang-up job covering the college football universe at large. Check it out. It's available wherever you get your podcasts. Also available on YouTube. And, of course, Spencer's a dear friend of mine right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. All right. Had a little bit of a snafu in the middle of a game, and one of the things I use our Locked On Cougars Insider group is we get to have live text conversations one-on-one with one another. I had a snafu during the game where I could see that there were messages in my inbox. Use a platform for this because it's not my personal number. It's a number we've set up for the Insiders group, and I could see the messages were there. I just couldn't read what they were. So I sent a little bit of a note to say, hey, can we get this fixed? It got fixed late at night. So I'm actually recording this a little bit later because I'm hoping to be fixed so I could get your guys' thoughts in on the show. So it's now working. So let's see here. First comment, Matthew Staple, two words, bowl eligible. Yeah, you're right. I use that without you even knowing you were going to use that, Matthew. So props to you on that. Let's see. Jake, do you know, this comes from Mark. Do you know how much Ryan Smith is going to have to be able to pony up to keep Jay Hill at BYU? I don't think it's just Ryan Smith, but there's going to be a significant portion of money that's probably going to need to be that quote-unquote Brinks truck backed up onto the lawn of Jay Hill to keep him in place in Provo. I will also say this. Jay Hill, I think, really, really enjoys being in Provo. I don't think he's looking to jump for the very first opportunity that comes his way. I'd be very surprised if he is just going to jump at whatever job may offer him an opportunity. I do know that he has aspirations of being a head coach once again, particularly at the highest levels of football, speaking of Power 4 football. The way this defense is performing, there are going to be athletic directors who say, hey, that coach over there at BYU, he did a good job of that Weber State team, and look what he's doing with this BYU defense. Could we get a little bit of that in our program? I think that he will be choosy, and when you're doing what he's doing, you can afford to be choosy when it comes to that. And I look forward to seeing what Jake can do. Weston, do you think that Jake has silenced his doubters? Has he not already? Come on, folks. He's got BYU at 6-0. He's got him ranked 14 as of recording this podcast. And by the time some of you may hear and or watch this, he may have them 10, 11, 12, somewhere in that range. This is a BYU team that was picked 13th in the preseason poll, and they're knocking on the door of the top 10 in the country, folks. Jake has absolutely silenced his doubters. If you are doubting Jake Retzlaff at this point, you've got your head absolutely buried in the sand. Just really, I don't get if anybody still is hating on Jake because he has been absolutely incredible. Kent says this, I still think we need to use the tight ends more. However, there's not a lot to complain about when you are 6-0, baby. You're right. There's not a lot to complain about. I had very little to complain about on today's show. Maybe I'll have some on our Monday edition when I get to our film review Monday, but we'll stay tuned on that. Other things here. Let's see. 0 sacks allowed while missing your starting center is huge. That comes from Mark. Very, very good point there. BYU has not given up a sack. I heard Gregor Bell point this out since the Kansas State game. It's been a really strong run. And remember, Connor Pay went out in the second series of that Baylor game. It's been almost 2 full games without your starting center, as Mark points out. You've given up 0 sacks. Truly impressive stuff. Let's see. Nick says this, BYU defense is the real deal. Also, Brent Brennan, you reap what you sow when you call timeouts in a game that is over. He should be glad his NFL caliber quarterback didn't get hurt getting blasted in the end zone during garbage time. That's a good point. They gave BYU an extra touchdown. Karma is real. It was really cool to see a guy like Isaiah Glasker get to take that pick 6 back. A couple of people pointed out, probably should have mentioned this earlier on. He had a Kyle Van Noy-esque type stat line. Tackles for loss, sack, forced fumble, pick 6. Really impressive what Isaiah Glasker accomplished in this game. And I thought just for a second that he was thinking about just going down to let BYU ice the game. I'm glad he returned it for the interception for the touchdown. I truly do think that it was the right thing to do. I know that Kalani wants to win with quote-unquote class, but as Nick points out, if you're going to call timeouts late in a game when you're beat, when it's over, yeah, guess what? just rewards coming your way, because the football gods, they don't take kindly to being spurned in that way. Alex, great team win. Very good point there. Michael says this: if we can keep Jay Hill going forward, I think his heart attack is a blessing in disguise for the program. Stress management and the like. Okay, I can see that. I wouldn't make light of anybody's health status. Let's see. Stress management, his health may seem what keeps him here for a while. If he stays, I see the season being a huge platform for recruiting high-level defensive talent. They've got a pretty good baseline to work with. You're not wrong about that, Michael. And we'll see what happens. Like I said, I think he's going to have opportunities, but I do think he will be choosy in terms of what his next job will be. Tanya, witness a confident beat down to the Wildcats. Cougars on top. It was confident. This is a BYU team that's very confident in what they're doing right now. Gary, I'm thrilled with the win and the margin by which they won. Good point. Let's see other thoughts here. Fun game comes from Landon. That pick by J-Rob was one of the best defensive plays I've ever seen. You're not kidding, because when he comes to that corner blitz, he realizes he's not going to get to the quarterback in time. So what does he do? He makes himself big, bats it with his left paw, tracks it in the air, intercepts it, and doesn't lose control of that football. It was a very, very impressive play. Jacob Robinson wants to be an NFL cornerback. He is showing some really, really good stuff out there. Other stuff. Spencer, gosh darn, we're a good football team. That's a good point. They are a good football team. That is a very, very good point. John Solomon, great win. Now time for hockey. By the way, if you've not gotten in on the Utah Hockey Club bandwagon, latch on now, folks. They're 3-0 to start their franchise history, and they're scoring goals in bunches. I'm right there with you, John. It was fun to watch hockey after BYU football wrapped up. Jeff Henor says this: we need to run the ball more consistently. Our offense was dead in the water until we had Ropati and LJ running more. I can see that. Obviously, you want to have a strong running game. I do think it's starting to round into form, though. And obviously, the health of LJ and Ropati, a big part of that. I think as you continue to get guys back to close to 100%, because I don't think that LJ is 100% yet. I do think that will get that running game going more consistently, Jeff. And they do need to run it consistently. There's no doubt about that. Other good ones here. Dominant win by the, and this is the best part, as Austin says this, B, exclamation point, Y, exclamation point, U, exclamation point, Cougars, like 5 exclamation points. Felt like one of the first games where we truly played complementary football. He adds this: loved seeing BYU drive the ball down the field on a 99-yard drive. And let's give a huge cheer to Bruce Mitchell and that entire offensive line. I have no doubt Connor was on the sideline beaming with pride at what those guys were doing for their defense, or excuse me, for their offense, excuse me. He did. He tweeted as such, actually, after the game. I was thinking, pull the tweet up here and read it for you guys. Really cool stuff. And by the way, Connor, he takes more pride in his guys performing for him than really anybody else out there. It's the crazy thing about Connor. He is so selfless in all of that. He said this, if I can find it here: one of the most impressive performances I've seen since I've been at BYU. So proud of my guy, Bruce Mitchell, and the whole O-line. They balled out today. You're not wrong. And really cool stuff to see Connor pumping up his guys. Real quick, by the way, I referred to this earlier. I just saw it as I was kind of scrolling through my tweets, trying to find the right tweet here. But the biggest thing is it's a topsy-turvy league, as we alluded to earlier on in this postcast. Well, John Wilner, I know he's a bit of a you-know-what, but he did say this: the Big 12 standings, number 1, picked 13th in the preseason poll. That's the BYU Cougars. Number 1, Matt Campbell. That's Iowa State. These are tied at the top, obviously. Number 1, beat Abilene Christian 52-51. That would be Texas Tech. All 3 of those programs tied at 3-0 atop the conference. Number 4, all these are tied at 4, picked 16th in the preseason poll. That's Arizona State, and on down the list. It is a topsy-turvy league out there. Number 4, 14th in the preseason poll. Number 4, picked 11th in the preseason poll. Number 4, Chris Kleiman, Kansas State, obviously a very impressive win as they kind of went back and forth in Colorado. It is a crazy upside down league, but enjoy it. It's really cool to see this BYU team performing the way that they are. Man, we are running out of time here, but I'm going to see if I can find one more comment here. I meant to work it in because I saw this. Let's see if we can find it before we go here. Man, I don't know where it went. Oh, there it is right there. Okay. Tyson gets the final word here. Good stuff here. The BYU defense does it again. Our offense did great as well. Good to see Jake playing with such confidence, going for 7-0 next week, baby. It's a good point. Going for 7-0. Crew Wakely said it during his media availability earlier this week. The best part about being 5-0 is the chance to go to 6-0. Now BYU 6-0. The best part about being 6-0, you can go 7-0 next week. Short week, getting ready for Oklahoma State on late Friday night. It's going to be cold, by the way. It's supposed to be like in the 40s here in Utah after we've had a really mild mild, downright, actually, no, not mild. It's been downright hot so far this fall. It's been just extra summer is what we've gotten so far, but it's truly going to be quote unquote fall weather out there when Oklahoma State comes to Lavelle Edwards Stadium. We'll spend the entire week breaking it down. Coming up on our next edition will be my film review Monday. I'll go back and watch this entire game. I'll have notes for you of what I liked that stood out once again. Also, maybe some other things that I feel like still need to be fixed to make BYU the best team they can be. But hey, there's not a lot to quibble with when you're 6-0. It's a really, really fun number to see BYU at. So thank you to all of you for your interaction. If I did not get your comment on today's show, understand that I saw them all finally in the case of our Locked On Cougars Insider Group. And I appreciate any and all interaction you guys have with the show and the support you give us every single day. We talk about you guys being everydayers. It truly is impressive how many of you, I still meet people all the time. Jake, I'm an everydayer. I appreciate the podcast. It means the world to me that you guys support it as much as you do. So thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen to the day. And of course, thank you to all of you who are everydayers right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.